We are early in the Gospel of John. Jesus has been baptized and his ministry begins. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said to him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." For these sacred words.
Thanks be to God.
Okay. You get to sing and then preach. It's kind of a tough transition. So there once was a town, and in this town there were two kinds of men. First group of men were men who shaved themselves. Other group of men were men who did not shave themselves. Now there was a barber in this town who was also a man. And so the question is, which group does the barber belong to? Because if the barber shaves himself, he does not shave himself. Because the barber only shaves the men who do not shave themselves. If he does not shave himself, then the barber must shave himself because of the opposite. And so we have a paradox here. If he shaves himself, he doesn't. If he doesn't, he does, because the barber only shaves the men who do not shave themselves. Now, this silly little paradox, believe it or not, undermined significant works in philosophy back in the early part of the 20th century. People like Gottlieb Frege, Alfred North Whitehead, and Bertrand Russell butted their heads up against this paradox in logic, and it's called Russell's paradox. And among many other things, it is about categorization. How do we categorize things? How do we categorize people? And we do categorize people. We categorize them by race, ethnicity, religion, by gender, sexual identity, politics, geographical location. You name it, and we come up with a way to slice and dice humanity into categories. And that's okay. We have to do that. It helps us think quicker. It helps us kind of analyze situations. But the problem with it is it tends to help us, it makes it easier to dismiss people. If they're in a category we don't like, we can just dismiss them. And I think of that because of this passage, and y'all all picked up on it. When Nathanael asked the question, it doesn't sound like a question, it sounds more like a statement. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? So for Nathanael, he's got two groups of people. He's got people from Nazareth and people who are not from Nazareth. And good things can come from the people who are not from Nazareth, but no good thing can come from the people who are from Nazareth. And I'm sensitive to this because I'm from Alabama. And there are lots of people who ask the question, can anything good come from Alabama? I myself have been known to make jokes at Alabama's expense. Here are two. One week after Linda and I got married, we were going through the line at our local Piggly Wiggly, and the cashier looked at us very closely and asked, "Are y'all brother and sister?" And Linda, still just a one-week bride, answered rather indignantly, "I'll have you know we're married." And I thought, doesn't technically answer the question. This is Alabama. People go to family reunions to meet that special someone. So, all that is a joke. That really did happen, but the rest of that's a joke. Alabama's no different than anybody else. So. And then the other joke that I made quite a bit was when we moved from Alabama to the Northwest, our biggest adjustment was the time change. Not the 2 hours, the 50 years. So that's my joke about Alabama. But I can do that because I'm from Alabama. See, so. But Alabama has earned its bad reputation, I must admit. It is always among the last in education and always among the first in executions. It was one of the last states to adopt Martin Luther King Day as a holiday, and for a large stretch of time, the only reason it ever was adopted is because they paired it with Robert E. Lee Day. It's earned its bad reputation. Also, one of the most churched states, which in this particular context is nauseating. So it's earned its bad reputation. We all know the stories. It goes back to the days of slavery and Jim Crow, the segregation, and the hoses in Birmingham, and all that stuff. So we all know that Alabama has a bad reputation, and it's well earned. So somebody could say, can anything good come from Alabama? But yeah, the answer to that is actually yes. There are some good that comes out of Alabama. I'll just throw out a few names, and I could spend a long time listing names of people from Alabama. Rosa Parks, of course, from Alabama, faced with a category choice. These are the chairs for white folks. These are the chairs for everybody else. And she chose to transgress those categories and became the spark of the Montgomery bus boycott, which was the spark for the civil rights movement. So Rosa Parks, she's from Alabama. Who else is from Alabama? Helen Keller from Alabama, from Tuscumbia, Alabama, in North Alabama. You can go to her house where she grew up and watch a play of her life put on in the back. I've seen it twice. An amazing person was Helen Keller. Jesse Owens humiliated and humbled Adolf Hitler at the Berlin Games of 1936 by defeating the master race. Jesse Owens from Alabama. Who else is important from Alabama? Jimmy Buffett. Jimmy Buffett from Alabama. Margaritaville's not a town in Alabama, but Jimmy Buffett's from there. And Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, grew up in Monroeville, Alabama. So, can anything good come from Alabama? Yeah, good things come from Alabama. So I'm actually proud to be from there, even though it's got all of its troubles. Certainly has a bad history. Categorizing people, of course, is one of the things it's known for. It's also true, though, in the New Testament that there were categories of people, and it made it easier to dismiss people. There were clean and unclean, and the unclean people you could dismiss. The unclean people included lepers, and for a good chunk of the time, it included women. And yet Jesus transgressed those categories by healing the woman that had the flow of blood, by healing lepers. So Jesus kind of transgressed the categories of clean and unclean. They also had the category of Jew-Gentile. So the Jewish people could dismiss the Gentiles. Yet Jesus transgressed those boundaries too. Went into Gentile territory, healed Gentiles. The Syrophoenician woman was a Gentile. So Jesus transgressed those categories. Samaritans. Didn't like the Samaritans, the Jewish people didn't. Had them categorized. People who weren't properly religious, who were ethnically suspect. Can anything good come from a Samaritan? Well, yeah, there's actually a parable called the Good Samaritan. And then Nathaniel's comment here. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Now, archaeologists have found some of Nazareth, and apparently it was a very small, kind of insignificant little rural community. Maybe Nathaniel was kind of a snobbish, big city Jerusalem guy. Who knows? Some say that Nathaniel was from Cana, and maybe Cana and Nazareth had a rivalry. Maybe the football teams didn't get along or whatever it was. And so he dismissed Nazareth. Says, can anything good come out of Nazareth? I think if there is one sin that progressives are as guilty of as conservatives, it is dismissal by categorization. Can anything good come from a red state? Can anything good come from a blue state? Can anything good come from a conservative? Can anything good come from a liberal? Can anything good come from an undocumented worker? Can anything good come from a white boy in Mississippi? Can anything good come from? And you just fill in the blanks. Because that's what we hear in our culture all the time. From all sides. Dismissal by categorization. Can anything good? And it's a dangerous thing for us to do. Because when we do that, we deny that we can make connections with other people and that we can communicate with people who are different from us. And that's an important thing to hang on to that possibility. As hard as it may be, as challenging as it may be, we've got to hang on to the possibility of connection and communication, even with people who are in a category we don't like. Some people, both on the progressive side and the conservative side, say that it isn't possible. That there are people in different categories that are so different from each other that they cannot understand each other. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's true because I've experienced a little bit of it in my own life. In 1993, during the summer, I was at seminary, the Divinity School at Emory University, Candler School of Theology. And in the summertime, I worked temp jobs. And in the summer of 93, I had a temp job in Stone Mountain, Georgia. Now, y'all have heard of Stone Mountain, Georgia, right? Rich Foose was from Stone Mountain. Did anything good come out of Stone Mountain? Stone Mountain is known for a couple of things. It's known for being a kind of a hot spot for the KKK. In fact, if you go to Stone Mountain, there are almost always trucks driving around it with Confederate flags waving in the breeze. Stone Mountain is a big limestone hunk of rock that's like 500 feet tall. It's an amazing thing to see, but apparently the locals didn't think it was amazing enough, so they carved on the side of it gigantic figures of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and Jefferson Davis to make it worth seeing. So that's Stone Mountain. And I had a temp job in Stone Mountain doing data entry one summer. And I had one colleague, another temp person. Her name was Starlene. She was an African-American young woman, single mom. And she and I sat side by side all summer long, 1993, doing data entry. And we had, over the course of that summer, one of the top 10 conversations I've ever had in my life. We talked about real stuff. And we had all day, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, all summer long. And I asked her, what is it like to be a black mother raising children under the gaze of Robert E. Lee? And she shared what that was like. And I shared with her what it was like being a white boy from North Alabama, relatively privileged, but just 2 generations removed from sharecroppers. My parents were the first ones with college educations in the family. And we opened up and we talked with each other and we shared and we formed a friendship and a bond that I have never forgotten. And as I say, it was one of the top 10 conversations I've ever had in my life because we talked about racism. A white boy and a black woman doing data entry for a summer. And there are those who will say that can't happen. There's too many differences between those two categories. And I say, rubbish. It can happen. She and I hit it off so well that we ultimately got fired for laughing too much. But it was a temp job, so who cares, right? So Nathaniel wants to know, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Can anything good come out of Nazareth?